Welcome to the Professor Leads podcast. I'm your host, Bill DeCourcy. This is the podcast where we explore actionable insights, inspiring stories, and strategies to help you grow your business. Today, we're talking to someone whose career spans some of the biggest brands in the world, Eric Gray, the founder of Maverick Content Studios. Eric and I worked together at EA Sports, where he was instrumental in shaping digital content strategies, but his journey didn't stop there. Eric later brought his talents to Universal Orlando Resort, where he led digital marketing for one of the most iconic destinations in the world. Now he's the founder of Maverick Content Studios, a company built from scratch to help businesses craft content strategies that truly resonate. So today we're going to talk about his entrepreneurial journey, the lessons he learned at EA and Universal, and how his faith played a role in his decisions, and how Maverick Content Studios can help businesses like yours stand out. Thank you so much for joining us, Eric.
Man, I'm so glad to be here. That seemed like a intro for someone a lot more special than me, but I'm going to take it. We all need this, and so I'm just going to take it.
You deserve it. And you've had a fascinating career, starting at EA Sports, where we worked together, as I mentioned. Let's start there. What was it like working with one of the biggest names in gaming?
You know, it's funny, Bill. The story that not a lot of people know is I originally started in sports radio. We got brought to EA Sports to launch a game called EA Sports Game Show. It was like a live game that instead of canned or recorded audio, there was a live team of producers and on-air hosts that were going back and forth with the people that were playing the game. And that game didn't last super long. EA Sports, they tried a lot of things and looked for opportunities to greenlight. And so they moved a few of us into what was at the time called, they said, these content people. They said, let's move these content people into this web team or this, I think social media is a thing. I heard that a couple of times. And so we got moved into this social media team. And really, it was such a really cool and interesting time. You're talking 2006 to 2012. This is like the birth of where Facebook and Twitter started to become channels and avenues for brands to start to connect and engage. But very few knew what to do. And EA Sports is one of those, right? They knew that gamers mattered to the business. And so they knew that community was something we have done a little bit in the past, but they didn't really know how to use these new emerging social media channels. And so, we got some time to really tinker and to learn. And that's one thing I'd just say. And I talk to a lot of social media professionals and business entrepreneurs. The best way to learn this stuff is to really just go do it. I mean, we were working for a multi-billion-dollar brand, right, at EA Sports.
Right.
But we weren't staffed appropriately yet because we didn't know what this thing was. And so we were just testing and learning. A little funny anecdote for those of you that don't know, Madden, the big NFL game that they do every single year, has a big party, really. It's called Madden Bowl at the Super Bowl, usually the week prior. I remember that we launched the EA Sports Madden NFL Instagram account at the event while Snoop Dogg was on stage. There was no legal team. There was nobody stopping us. We just launched it. And I'm sure if someone heard that story today, they'd get quite a slap on the hand. But I tell that story to say we spent a lot of time learning. We spent a lot of time failing. But we always looked at the data and was looking what should we be doing? What should we be investing in? But the cool thing about that time for us was I got to bring this mindset of radio and broadcasting, which really was, back in the day, I just wanted to keep people coming back to the show from 3 to 6 every single day. And as I kind of stumbled into marketing and into communications, I realized along the way that should be our goal as well. How do we get people to just come back to us every single day? How do we treat these channels like our own media? And so, the time it's a long way of saying the time at EA Sports was super valuable, both in the stage of my career, but also just where the world was in social and digital. And it gave me a lot of chances to practice, to fail, to learn, and to develop a lot of skill sets that have really, I still literally talk about today with my team.
When I think about that time working there, I saw you and the rest of the team. And I remember Rob and Jason Thompson were part of that team, if I'm not mistaken as well. I used to listen to them back in San Antonio on sports radio. So I know a little bit of the backstory there, but what I think about when I think about the way that you would do content production at things like Maddenpalooza and Madden Bowl is a lot of running and gunning. And like you said,
it was.
You weren't running this stuff by the lawyers. You were asking for forgiveness rather than permission. So fast forward to where you are now. How does that kind of run and gun, take advantage of opportunities as they present themselves, approach,
Yeah.
impact what you're doing with Maverick?
A lot actually. It's kind of funny. We are, I know we're kind of jumping forward a little bit, but Maverick Content Studio is a content studio for really large brands, medium brands, anybody that's looking to really connect, engage, and tell stories. And we can talk about Maverick a little bit more later, but just to connect the dots there to that question, I always ask the team, how many people do we really need on this shoot? What kind of footprint do we really need? And a lot of times, there are giant productions, tons of people. You need gaffers and PAs and lighters and someone on mic and a camera guy, and then a second camera guy, and then a director of photography, and then a director. And look, I get it. There are multi-million-dollar shoots, there are TV shows, and but a lot of times the production world, I believe, kind of just does the way you do it at the biggest level at every single level. And what it loses in those moments is the ability for speed, and the ability to be nimble, and to be able to be quick and on top of what's kind of breaking in the moment, from a culture standpoint. So what I would say is, you need small teams that are really, really empowered to go create great work. They need to be talented people. And so we literally are building Maverick with that mindset. How many people do we really need? What are the exact roles that we need? And as we add things in and grow and get bigger for some shoots, what level of nimbleness does that take away? And how do we make sure that we're not losing that?
And really, this wasn't possible until just a couple of years ago with the democratization of what's happening with technology. I mean, look at you and I. We're a couple of guys with a microphone and a computer talking to each other on some, Zoom-like software right now, reminiscing about things and talking about how we're trying to move businesses forward. There's the technology, and not just the technology, but the way that people consume content has changed to really support the kind of on the spot, run and gun, impromptu, in the moment content creation that you do. Has that been your experience?
Oh, 100%. I tell CMOs all the time, we're in the biggest communication shift we've ever seen in the history of the world. And many people are acting like nothing's changing. Let's keep going back to TV. Let's keep doing these long commercials. Let's pretend like people are watching them. And you talk about technology. Let's pretend we need 12 people and these red cameras and but at the same time, this Sony A7 III that I'm recording on right now costs less than $2,000, and it's a beautiful picture. There's literally no one in the room with me. I've got a light, a mic, a camera, and the software that we're hosting and recording this on. And go back 2 years, 3 years, and tell some kind of legacy production people what we're doing today, and they'd be like, "No, you're crazy. You're gonna need a whole team of people there. Who's your writer and who's got got camera A and who's got camera B?" And again, there are moments for that. So I'm not trying to downplay the moments where you need big high level production, but there's no question that technology has changed. The channels have changed, and where I like to look at is what are creators doing? Because when creators start out on YouTube, they're not starting out like they're Mark Rober or like they're Mr. Beast and they've got hundreds and hundreds of people. They start out with a camera and an idea and a couple friends maybe. And they take that and they build and they build and they build, but they're doing it with like one camera, and then they add a light, and then they feel really important when someone has a script. They're like, "Hey guys, today we finally have a script," right? That's literally, and they're building millions and millions of people, these big giant audiences. And so what I challenge brands and businesses to do is, how can you get uniquely creative in every step of the process, not just the pre-production, but the actual technology that's powering the production? How do you get creative with the equipment that you need? I mean, not to throw it back at you, Bill, but when we had our off-air kind of chat before the show, like, you were showing me your whole setup. Like, it's so cool what you can build today. It takes a minute to kind of figure it out, but it definitely gives you some abilities to tell stories. At the end of the day, it's all about telling stories and connecting. And you don't just need a big team, a big agency. We're here if you need us. But you don't just need all these things to do something that really can connect with an audience. You can do it with a great idea, with a camera and a good mic.
But you do need passion. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Oh, yeah. 100%. I mean, passion is kind of the main need for any storyteller to kind of bring something to life. And you're also, what comes with passion is going to be that creative problem solver. They're going to look at things a little differently. They're going to chase down some technology that might be different. They're going to try this. or they're going to research. I'm in a coaching group and we talk about the different ways to do content all the time because it's always changing it. I geek out to that stuff. I'm not a gearhead, but I am always interested in what are the different nuanced things that I can learn to try to help me tell better stories, more efficient, faster, and get it out the door and still high quality.
So as I recall, when you moved from EA Sports to Universal, social media content creation was really starting to catch fire. And you had a passion for obviously what you were doing in sports and what you were doing in gaming. Tell me how the shift from those areas to theme parks influenced your perspective on marketing. What did you bring that helped supercharge your team? What did you learn when you were there? What's the main lesson of having worked in that different area, that different industry, and bringing the same passion to it?
I mean, at the end of the day, all of these things have to do with what is your ultimate goal from a business standpoint, right? What is your business strategy? And so taking off the gaming hat where we were really trying to connect with gamers, like we wanted them to know, like, and love Madden, know, like, and love Tiger Woods or now PGA, right? These games that we're trying to be, we wanted to connect with them and we wanted them to care about our brand. And, you know, if you went back to those days, there were some days where Electronic Arts was on some not great list of public opinion, right? And we had to really shift some of that brand perception stuff. And we did it by trying to connect with our audience. When you go to a theme park, very different monster, right? It took me probably a year and a half to really learn the travel and tourism business and understand what is the value of content? What's the value of storytelling? It's easy to say, oh, well, they got annual pass holders, so those are your fans, so create content for your fans. It's like, well, yes, that is true, and we did do a lot of that. But there's a much bigger business opportunity, and the thing that I got introduced at EA Sports that I didn't have to deal with as much at EA. I'm sorry. The thing I got introduced with at Universal Parks that at EA Sports, I didn't have to deal with as much. EA Sports as a brand was awesome, right? It was awesome. Universal Parks was the younger brother to Disney Parks down the street.
Right.
And we had to find a way to really emotionally connect with people, differentiate ourselves from the Walt Disney World, the Disney parks of the world. And we did it with our product, right? We brought in Harry Potter in 2012. We had amazing rides and we had awesome product. But when it came to how we were communicating that and how we were connecting emotionally, we just had a tougher time. We kind of would just follow suit. We looked like every other theme park. And, you know, so I would say my time at Universal, what we tried to do is we tried to lean more into more boldness, bold messaging, bold takes, coming at things a little bit differently. We tried to highlight things more like user generated. We did a national TV campaign and all the clips were from people that just have their phones out in our theme parks every single day. The one big takeaway that I thought was interesting, I used to go at Universal Parks when I was having just a tough day or just a hard day. I would go to the front of Diagon Alley. So if you don't know Harry Potter, it's one of the worlds at Universal Parks and Resorts, but it's obviously one of the big parts of the Harry Potter series from J.K. Rowling. And when you walk through Diagon Alley, it's really amazing if you ever get a chance to go. I would just sit there and watch guests turn the corner and look up and see, to them, the greatest story ever told come to life. And their jaw would hit the ground. Some of them would be hugging someone, their kids. Some people would be crying. And it was just, it would just give you all the juice to go back to work, right? And to do what you do every single day. So knowing that why is always really good. But the thing I used to talk about for marketing, and I was like, man, guys, all the time we do these really CGI things where we put people, holding on for dear life and screaming in this like very CG environment like they're in the movies. But that's not real. That's not the experience people get here. I said, just turn the camera on the people walking into Diagon Alley. And we did get a chance to do that. But there's a lot of things that are baked in there. There's authenticity. There's really understanding what separates your brand. For us, Disney had a lot of these old school worlds. We literally put you inside of these new worlds that are so current with what people cared about. And so that was a really special moment as I learned kind of the travel and tourism industry. And Universal Parks does it as good as anybody. Nothing against my Disney friends, by the way. They're fine too.
Not at all. So you mentioned authenticity. And one of the things that I have a passion for doing when I bring out other people's stories is to authentically understand what's driving them. So we look at Eric going from sports radio to EA to Universal, and now you've started something new. I want to know from you, and I know you fairly well, so I think I can ask this question. Faith often guides the paths that we take, and I know personally that it's been important in your life. So I'd like you to share, if you're comfortable, how your faith has influenced your decision to go from these major corporate roles, maybe these safer roles.
Oh yeah.
And to be an entrepreneur and to start Maverick.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it, and I'm happy to talk about it. I'm a preacher's kid, and so raised in the church, kind of had all the traditional things. Didn't ever kind of fall off the wagon just because I was kind of always there. But I'd say at an early age, the things that motivated me were accolades, were words of affirmation. And so I got a kind of energy from that. And so whether it was in sports or in radio or in the corporate world, I was always chasing not just success, but validation in my employer, in my title. And that became a bit of a undercover ego. I wasn't like an egomaniac. I wasn't yelling at my team. I think I was a pretty good leader, but there was definitely moments in my mid to late 30s as I was seeing success at Universal, one of the younger marketing directors kind of that had been there in a while. And I started to kind of, like myself some me, to steal a line from Terrell Owens. And I didn't see anything that was the matter with it. I was doing really good at work. We were building a good team. And then I was kind of dreaming about what's this next thing I'm going to do to make myself awesome. And like, I didn't say that out loud, but that was kind of in my heart. Right. And I didn't know it. And I did have a moment at Universal where, you never want these moments when you're a young leader. You need these moments. You need people that step in and give you some really hard feedback. And that happened. And I got some really hard leadership feedback at Universal when I was building that team. And, from two people that I still know and still trust and still love, but it was hard to deal with. But I think the main thing that was really going on for me, so you asked from a faith standpoint, what was happening was I felt like it was a bit of a warning. I felt like God was telling me that I've given you so much and you haven't really given me credit. You haven't really fully turned and followed me. And I felt like at one point he was saying, this is just a warning. I can take all of this away. The logos, the titles, the money, whatever is feeding you today, you've got to let that go and understand and trust and follow me. And so that is, ultimately what happened over the next kind of 6 to 12 months. I went on a kind of a long journey, still, stayed at Universal, stuck it out. We rebuilt the team, did some of the best stuff we've ever done over those last 3 years. But it really took me on a introspective kind of view of myself and what matters. And I found out that corporate just didn't matter like it once did. The titles didn't matter. The logo on my shirt didn't matter anymore. And I really felt completely centered around God and my faith and what he was asking me to do. And I didn't know what it was. So I stayed the course at Universal for, a long time, a couple more years, but I knew in my heart of hearts that I was just made different than what was going on in a corporate environment. And this is by no means a knock at Universal. They're wonderful people. There's a lot of believers there. And so I felt very much at home, but it was just what you expect, right? It was building decks. It was convincing people. It was, we went through COVID during that time. That was a hard time for everybody that, we kind of stuck through there. And I just got to the end of the run there. And I was just like, who do you want to be? There's a book called, In a Pit with a Lion on a Snowy Day by a guy named Mark Batterson. And he did a bunch of research and he talked to a bunch of people kind of way older in their lives and asked them kind of, and he said, the one thing that was universal with all of them is that I wish I would have taken more risk. And that just stuck in my mind. I always thought I would be an entrepreneur. I just didn't never know how it would happen. And I remember the day, it was April 28th, 2023. I said a prayer. I walked out of Universal for the first time. Really, I thought I was walking away from my dream job. If my job hit LinkedIn, there'd be thousands of people applying for it. Senior Director of Social Media and Content, Influencer Marketing at Universal Parks and Resorts globally.
Absolutely.
And I walked away with like a couple months of runway. It wasn't a lot, a prayer and a supportive wife. And I just kind of said, all right, God, like my hands are empty now. I'm fully in your hands. And yeah, it's we're doing something pretty special here. We got 6 full-time employees. We just had someone accept today, so that's awesome. We're continue to build. We've got 5 or 6 clients, 3 key clients, great relationships with them. We got an office in Winter Park, Florida. And so like, I'm not here to say we're crushing it and like, this isn't like grind and hustle on entrepreneur message. But yeah, I mean, we bet on God and he's continued to show up day after day. So I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share that story. I know it was a little long.
That's wonderful, Eric. And I will just emphasize, for example, in my own life, having that spouse at home who supports that kind of vision and shares your faith is critically important. And this is why I really wanted you to be on this podcast, because if you know my audience, which is mainly focused around the insurance space, they're mostly independent agents and entrepreneurs.
Sure.
So what you're talking about is something that many of them have faced, and many of them have taken that leap to start something from scratch. And a lot of them have felt a higher calling to pursue that. So if you could distill it down to one piece of advice that you would give, those who may be struggling with having taken that leap, or maybe you're at the precipice of taking that leap, what one piece of advice could you give them that would encourage them to make a decision that's ultimately going to serve the greater good of their lives and their families' lives and their community, rather than what they're doing now?
Yeah, I mean, it's over my shoulder. It's Proverbs 3:5 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding, and in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. That gave me such comfort during that time frame where I was getting a lot of bad feedback, and I was like, man, is this for me? Am I in marketing? What's my future hold? I felt a little bit disheveled. And even as I got into Maverick, and I'm like, man, am I really doing this? 2 months of runway, 0 clients. How is this going to happen? And so to me, that's where I know that's probably not something that's going to speak to everyone, but that's where faith mattered so much, is to understand. I tell myself this all the time when I'm in some sort of worry or frustration. Is this going to work out? Is that going to work out? The story's already been written. All you can do is put one foot in front of the other and continue to persevere, and just know that you're good, right? I had someone tell me one time when I was going through this, a buddy of mine, Ryan, and I was telling him all the fears and all the worries that I had, and he said, "Are you healthy?" And I was like, yeah. He's like, is there some money in the bank? Well, yeah, there's some money in the bank. Do you have a good marriage? Are your kids safe? Do you have some level of insurance? Do you have a roof over your home? Do you have friends and community and people to care for you if things went south? And it was like, yes, yes, yes. And he was like, brother, you're rich. You're fine. You're fine. Just take a breath and you'll get through this challenge. You're fine. And I mean, I could get emotional kind of reliving that moment, because I remember where I was at that time. And I've shared that to a few other people that are in those moments. And I understand it now, being in the seat of an entrepreneur, whether it's trying to make payroll or hoping that big deal lands, or understanding that there's challenges, in the market, or that's coming at you and you don't exactly know how to fight all of it or to defend yourself against all of it. Sometimes you just gotta, at least for me, kind of give that to God and say, you've got this, and then get back to work.
That faith that God has a plan to prosper you is incredibly powerful when you're making those type of life decisions. Yeah. So going back a little bit to some of the more business oriented things,
Let's get the emotions out of here.
No, I mean but this is what it's all about.
No, it's good. Yeah.
Because, these are the things that I think some people are a little reticent or reluctant to talk about, like, what's going on in people's hearts. Yep. People are much more comfortable talking about the intellectual aspects of starting a new business, and the mechanics of that. But the idea that there is a deep emotional, and for a lot of people, spiritual decision that needs to be taken into account. That calculus shouldn't be lost. And I'm very grateful that you shared it with us as honestly you did. So, you got it. But in terms of the mechanics, we worked at these big companies. We worked at EA Sports together. You worked at Universal. I've worked at big companies like Marriott. What guiding principles do you carry today from those big billion-dollar corporations to what you're building now in Winter Park?
Yeah. I think the number one I would say is brand matters more than you think. And brand doesn't necessarily just mean if you're PepsiCo or EA Sports or Marriott.
Mm.
Like that's what people think is like, that's a brand. And I'm like, no, Bill is a brand.
Mm.
Like there are people that have a personal opinion about Bill based on things that Bill has done or said or how he showed up. Eric has a personal brand. Whenever I left Universal and started my own thing, I started a podcast and a newsletter pretty quickly thereafter. Now, yes, I'm a content guy. I used to be in radio, so it's not completely out of school. But there are many people that leave big companies and then post on LinkedIn, hey, I'm available to consult if anybody wants anything, which is like the most not interesting thing ever, right? Like It sounds like you could have gotten fired. Nobody really knows. Maybe you left on your own. And I wanted, when I left Universal, to sound like I was building something special. I was building something that was a brand. I was building something that independently on its own over time would garner unique attention. And so that's one of the things I would say is, how are you building your brand? How are you doing things that are positioning you in a certain way? How are you doing things that are going to create some level of attention? And I think a lot of times people think that, to be a creator and influencer, it's like, I go to get 1 million fans or 500,000 followers. No, you don't. I mean, if you want to be a YouTuber, maybe you do. But if you're selling insurance, you need 10 new people a month to see your YouTube video that are really good and important 10 people, right? Like that's all that you need. So how are you showing up every single day and looking different than the one down the street because you're providing day-to-day value? So brand is kind of the number one thing I would say. As you know, I take from those days of EA Sports and Universal Parks about how can you apply brand to small businesses even.
You see, that's interesting though, Eric, because when we've talked about this in the past, you've talked to me at length about the importance of having a brand before you try to build a brand. And the sequencing may be a little confusing for people. So what I'm hearing you say, and please correct me if I'm wrong or reinforce this, is that you have to, no matter what role you're in, you need to be building that brand actively and then emphasizing it going forward rather than stopping one thing and then starting over as a new branded entity. I think that sequencing trips a lot of people up when they think about, having to build something. In reality, what I hear you saying is that every day we are building the brand that we should be perpetuating into the next phases of our career.
Yeah, I'll tell you. So, so funny that you bring this up. So, I'm on Instagram as like Eric, dad, coach, and I'm doing a little bit of stuff for the business. I'm going to be transitioning it to a little bit more business this year. And I was thinking to myself, even, right? I mean, I'm in this process with your listeners, right? How do I transition from being Eric, Gray personal to Eric Gray Maverick CEO on this Instagram account? Do you start a new Instagram account? Do you do this? What do you do? And so I went to my buddy David Brinkley. He's an agency owner out in San Diego. And I went way down in his feed and I was like, I'm going to learn exactly how he transitioned, right? From like when he was using this with like pictures of his girlfriend to when he's like using this as a thought leader. And he's got like 50,000 followers on Instagram. So I was like, I can't wait to see his strategies and the planning and I got to the bottom and I was like, okay, a picture of a girlfriend. Okay, picture vacation. And then it was like a video of him doing it, like just doing tips, like social media tips. And I was like, well, that was quick. And then I went to another one and I was like, the top 3 things that are happening in social media. And then I went to another one and it was a picture of him and his girlfriend. And I was like, oh, so you just have to start. Like that's literally what I learned. You just have to start. It's not going to be perfect, but you just got to start whatever that transition is. Don't overthink it. Don't think there's some big plan or big strategy that someone else is doing that you're not doing. They got to, whatever it is, whatever you're chasing, 1,000 followers, 500 followers, 10,000 followers, whatever they need to create attention. Whoever you're looking at got to that because they just started. So my advice would be think really a lot about who your target audience is. What are they searching on Google? What are they watching on YouTube? What knowledge do you have in your mind that you could create something and put it out there and just continually show up, continually show up, continually show up. And you will build the little audiences that all that you need. And then you'll look back a year later and 2 years later and be like, man, I wish I'd have started 6 months before that. I wish I'd have started a year before that.
It's incredibly interesting that you'd say that because last March, I started up this Professor Leeds video series on LinkedIn. And I looked back, I believe it was in October and November, and realized I was about to do my 100th video.
That's so crazy.
And It's one of the most enjoyable things that I do is bringing that passion. And I look back to my own transition, and there was no transition from me posting kind of the banal routine LinkedIn type content to me just talking to people about things that were in the news and my perspective on things like regulation and the like. And it catches fire. And I think the passion is what really brings that authenticity and distinctiveness that allows people to make that transaction. And this is the point that I want to make, and the question I want to ask, which is, when you talk about leads, when you talk about getting customers, making sure that people are aware of your business and have a compelling reason to engage with you, you have always said that the best lead strategy is founder-led content. I think that's really important. What does that mean for people who want to distinguish what they're doing online?
Yeah, so I like to tell stories to make points. So I'll tell another one. I had a buddy of mine who's running a third-party ticketing business. And he had worked with a YouTube strategist, and this company had tons of content, and they thought they were doing good content. It was like tips videos, and it was this, and it was really entertaining focused. It was value focused, but it was underneath the umbrella of this brand. And this YouTube strategist went to him, and he was like, you need to take all this and take it down. And you need to start a YouTube channel with just you, your face, your name, and re-upload it week after week after week after week after week. They had done that for like a year underneath the brand, right? It's a logo. It's a corporation. It's a company. Not very compelling. But now it's under a person. Well, that's an influencer. That's a creator. That's a human. That's somebody you care about. And it went bonkers. It went through the roof. So I think the point is pretty clear there, right? Like, people want to follow people. I'm not saying brands can't grow. Brands can't build audiences. They can. It's harder. It's much more interesting. Many more people want to follow Bill or Joe or Michelle and what they're doing and the content that they're putting out there, rather than your logo that you really, really crafted. And so I would challenge people to think about, should we really be spending a lot of money in our, and by the way, this is something I'm thinking about right now, as we're starting an agency from scratch. Like, if you go look at the Maverick social channels, they're not great. And it's because right now the attention is coming from founder-led content, from my content, my LinkedIn, my YouTube, my Instagram, my TikTok, my podcast, my newsletter. And so for a while I was like, no, I got to invest in Maverick. Like, Maverick's this brand that I'm building, and I still am. But you can't ignore that founder-led content today, like influencer, is reaching more people today than business-led content. And there's especially for small and medium-sized business. Yeah.
And there's a distinction there between influencers and founders, right? Influencers are people who may be in the space and may have an affinity for a certain thing and may touch on a lot of different products and have sponsorships and the like, but that's a person. That's not a brand. That's a person. Yeah. That's much different than the founder who's out there generating the content about their business and about their passion.
Yeah. I tell every founder that I know, if you can afford it and you're comfortable with it, you should have a videographer with you at every sales pitch, at every lunch, at every presentation, anything that you're doing that's out and about, even to a certain extent of what you're doing now, right? Like, I could have my videographer right here recording all of this, and Bill's going to take this and go and do stuff with it, but I could take stuff and do stuff with this as well, right? So to me, covering, when I say covering, think about it as like from like a news angle, covering yourself like a news reporter would cover yourself. And chopping that into really interesting sound bites and then getting that out to your audience is so valuable. And I know it's hard for some people to be on camera. I get it. And especially if you're talking to probably 55 plus year olds, it's going to be a little less comfortable than a founder that's 35. So I understand that it's challenging, but I saw somebody did something the other day. They were like, I need to do this more, but I'm not ready to do it. And so he set up a camera with a ring light on a tripod, and every day he recorded himself doing something. And he like shared the first one and the last one. And the difference of comfortability on camera was just night and day. So again, it's one of those things. Just start. Like, you're gonna suck in the beginning. But do 100 videos. This is my favorite Mr. Beast story, and I'll wrap this one up. Someone asked Mr. Beast, if you don't know him, biggest YouTuber ever. You should know him, but biggest YouTuber ever. He does really crazy spectacle videos now today. has multi-million-dollar shoots, giant crews. So it's not really relatable, but I always love this. Someone came to him and was like, man, how do I go viral? Or how do I create a big YouTube following? And he said, and they wanted like the tip or the thing to unlock, or what's Jimmy doing? Jimmy's his name, Mr. Beast, Jimmy Donaldson. And he said, do 100 videos. And every time you do them, look and see what worked and what didn't, and make each one better. And by the time you've done 100 videos, you won't need to ask Mr. Beast what to do because you'll have learned. You'll know what to do. I love that.
I've lived that experience personally, and it is absolutely spot on. I think some people think it's a little strange that I come to work with my computer and a camera bag, because there's always going to be an opportunity for me to set up a tripod and for me to just capture something, whether it's extemporaneous or impromptu, whatever it is. But that's genuine. That's real life. That shows people in the moment doing the thing that they're passionate about.
Yeah.
So let's talk about content strategy. There is no magic formula, like you just said. But, what is the secret to having that genuineness, to having that authenticity, that secret sauce that resonates with an audience? Not the formula to getting 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000 followers, but to actually get content that people will stop and listen to and that will feel is valuable.
Yeah. So we marketing is generally done in a top-down marketing funnel, right? Everybody knows about the funnel. We're attracting leads, we're educating them, and we're converting them. What we like to talk about here at Maverick is we like to think about this as an audience building strategy, because we just think it's the new media way of doing marketing today. I'd rather build marketing for loyalty than a one-time conversion. That's just me. That's my business and many businesses that we consult with. So we talk a lot about what does that look like different from that. So we think about it more as a flywheel. So yes, we're attracting, then we're connecting. We spend a lot of time in connection and then passion. And that passion side of the back end, that's where you're building brand advocates. So we think about this as this flywheel that slowly will get faster and faster over time, the more you get people to know, like, and love you. So that's done a lot better in a PowerPoint, which we're not going to do today. The reason why I bring that up is because we start every content strategy with that mindset. First is our audience. Who are they? What do they care about? What intersections do you have? How do you build your content strategy around the connection strategy? How can we attract? How can we connect with them? How do we build passion with them? And then we go right into almost like an editorial exercise. What are the core content topics that we think we can deliver from an attract, that we can deliver from a connection and deliver from a passion standpoint? And if you're following me as I go through this, our entire marketing communications then will be built off of those core topics. Because remember, your goal is to get someone to come back from 3 to 6 every day. So you got to be doing things that are somewhat familiar, somewhat consistent, that people will continue to follow, whether it's a newsletter. Like, you wouldn't do this podcast completely different every single time, because once someone likes it, they want to know what they're getting themselves into, right? That's what's going to make them subscribe and stay on board with that. Same idea, right? So if you're a independent insurance person, you got to understand who is that target audience and what are they looking for out on Google? What are they searching for? And use those topics as how to attract them. Now we move into connection. This is where you're building a relationship. How are you building more one-to-one interactions with them? Are you commenting with them? Are you talking back to them? Are you having conversations in direct message on LinkedIn or on Twitter, on Instagram? Are you literally really interacting them? You're no longer a logo. You're a one-to-one conversation. So you're building a relationship. And then passion is, once they've worked with you, are you constantly trying to find ways to provide value, or are they just a transaction now and you're not worried about them? You're worried about the new leads that are coming in. So it's literally how we think about audience, connection strategy, brand topics, and we build everything through that.
One of the things that I can share from my own personal experience that resonates exactly with what you just said is when I started Professor Leads, I made a vow that I was not going to let a single comment go unanswered, that I was going to interact with anybody who took the time to interact with me, that was just out of respect and courtesy, if not, for the other reason of building my audience. And it has worked. It is absolutely, in my opinion, that's the number one thing that you can do, is to make sure that you're creating a two-way dialogue through your content publication where you are interacting with the community that you really do need to nurture.
Yeah. I've worked with a business coach who says, you should be at least 10 times a day interacting with someone digitally in your Twitter network, in your LinkedIn network. Maybe they commented on something. Maybe they just like, he's like, everybody that likes anything you've ever done, you should comment back to them and say, hey, appreciate the like. Is there anything I can do for you? You know, you're looking for insurance. I probably wouldn't say looking for insurance, but you'd have some sort of interaction with them. And I think, Bill, you know, that's a really great way of living that out. Is, you know, it's not just about pushing the message on people. It's once they've come in, how are you doing things to connect? How are you doing things to keep them close, keep the brand sticky to them?
Absolutely. So you live this every day, and I know you may be reluctant, and appropriately so, to talk about specific clients, but can you share with us just generically a success story where you've taken this approach that we've described over the last half an hour or so, and Maverick Content Studios has helped transform a business through the content strategy that you've provided?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few different examples that come to mind. There's a bunch from back in our EA days and a lot at Universal. But since we've been with Maverick, we've been working with one of the larger hospital systems here in kind of the Southeast, but they go all the way over to Denver. And it's actually internal communications, which has been really fun. And they came to us and they're like, look, we love your idea of audience building and building fandom. We have a growing internal team member base, 93,000 team members. We have a really important hospital mission. And we want to make sure we're doing a good job of communicating to people, but in a way that is new media, right? They were doing a lot of really, you know, they were doing a lot of content, but it was just old TV style, right? It was like, just on some sticks, shot at an angle, a little lower third, and it looked like an old news package. But these people that are showing up every day, these team members, they're 25-year-old nurses and 31-year-old nurses that are on TikTok every day. So the content they're consuming is very different than what the internal communications team was giving them. And they're like, Eric, come in and help us reevaluate how we do content, train us how to do it upright, and then help us produce a lot of things. And so, you know, what I could say is we produced about 26 different videos for them last year. And their views on their videos, again, this is for internal comms, has gone up like 225%. And there's more comments, there's more interactions. And so it's working. And not even on the stuff that we produce, the stuff that they're producing that's better off the training we provide them has increased significantly. And so, you know, we're in the early days of that relationship. We're excited to kind of enter year 2 with them. But it's been really, really fun to take this model and apply it. Really, you can apply it to anyone that's looking to build and connect, build relationships. And so it's been really fun to do that from an internal comm standpoint.
You know, I give you and that company a lot of credit because I don't think a lot of people think that what you're doing from a content strategy standpoint necessarily would apply to internal communications, but that's just another key audience for a company.
Yeah.
So that is extraordinarily interesting. It's something to think about if you're out there with a company that's struggling to get engagement from their own internal audiences. This kind of, excuse the pun, maverick approach to creating content that's very different than what you've been doing previously sounds like it can really make an impact. And speaking of the name Maverick, I've been curious. I haven't asked you this before, but what inspired the name Maverick? And that, you know, would imply some uniqueness and some differentiation there. What is unique and different about Maverick?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we like to think that the word Maverick is a bit of a different, you know, someone that thinks different, someone that's a bit courageous, someone that bucks the norms. And it's all true. And that is part of where it comes from, right? Like I left corporate for a lot of those reasons. I create different kind of content than the garbage that's in social today because of a lot of those reasons. But there's some other smaller things. I'm from Dallas, Texas. And so Maverick has a long time history in the state of Texas. If you go look up where the word came from, I won't bore you with that story. But the funny thing is I originally named the agency Gray Light. And it was off of this scripture that I did. And it was very, you know, a purpose driven. And then one day my wife turned to me and she goes, you know, the name Gray Light's not very good. And I was like, we've been talking about this for 6 months. Leave it up to your wife to bring wisdom to the table. And she said, you know, you want to call it Maverick, but you're a fan of the Dallas Mavericks, the NBA team, which I am. and you're afraid your buddies will make fun of you. And I did. And she was right 100%. And from that point forward, it was Maverick Content Studio. And I couldn't have asked for better advice from my co-founder, Patricia Gray.
It's certainly a sticky name. It resonates, and it does mean something without having to go into an explanation of what it means. So when I talk to people about content, the number one emotion that I feel coming from people is a sense of being overwhelmed, that the world of content is too big for them to start taking those first and second and third steps, just starting doing it like you've talked about earlier. So distill it down to one piece of advice. There's a business owner out there who feels like they're not communicating with their audience in an effective manner that's gathering and holding their attention, and they feel overwhelmed by the challenge. What do you say to somebody like that to get them started?
Well, let me ask you a question back. What do you think is the most important digital network platform for these people? Where do they engage the most with customers more generally?
LinkedIn generally.
Yeah. Okay. So what I would say is go watch. I'd love to give you my training, but I don't have one. Go find some training on LinkedIn. I really like Justin Welsh, and Justin Welsh has some LinkedIn operating systems for content. If you really want to go hard, go watch that. It's like $199. He might even have a deal going right now. I'd love to have a kickback from Justin, but I do not. But go watch Justin's LinkedIn strategy. You can take the whole thing and it'll give you a lot more than what I'm going to give you right now. It's really, really strong. It's really, really good. But if you're not going to do the Justin Welsh, that's fine. I'm going to give you something else. What I want you to do is I want you to spend a few hours, go on YouTube, go on Instagram, go on LinkedIn, and just search topics that your customers might search. Watch videos, look on LinkedIn at what other people might be doing, and just make notes. Just make notes. They do this. They do this. This is the search. I like this. I like this. I like this. Take all of that, put it to the side. Go open an Excel spreadsheet, list it from 1 to 99, and start writing text-only content that you're going to do every day for 99 days. Every day for 99 days. And taking the learnings from what you just saw and all the research that you just did and thinking about your audience and what do they care about, and start writing text-only content. There's a lot of tips I could give you about text-only content. But again, to steal from Mr. Beast, do it 99 times. And by the time you get to 99, you will have learned a ton. And then the last thing I would say is what we were just talking about, Bill. Anybody that likes anything, comments with anything, interact with them. Thank them for their comment. Engage with them. What did you like about it? What would you like to see more? It's not really that hard. It does take time. Time block it out. Friday mornings, I time block out time to write LinkedIn content. Use ChatGPT. Don't overuse ChatGPT.
Yeah, amen to that.
Use it for ideation, right? Like put in there your research. Hey, here's the research that I got. What are a 10 type posts I could write about that I might have unique knowledge about? It'll give you some ideas. Then you take that and go write the post. Again, it's not rocket science, but I think a little bit of research and a little bit of practice and the consistency of doing it every day. And the last thing I'll say is it's going to feel uncomfortable and it's going to feel awkward. And it's like anything else, just like lifting weights in the beginning or running, right? Like it's going to be hard in the beginning. Just push through and get to 99. And if you do get to 99, email Bill. I want to hear who got to 99 because that's hard and you should be recognized for that. And if anybody gets to 99, I'll send them a Maverick freaking t-shirt. You email Bill and we'll get you a Maverick t-shirt, not worth a lot, but it's kind of cool. So if you need one,
it's very cool. And there'll be a Professor Leeds pullover to go along with it.
There you go.
So for those people who are in the audience right now, and they feel like they are ready for the level of coaching, the level of care, the level of creativity that Maverick Content Studios brings to the table, how do they get in touch with you? How do they start to work with you?
Yeah, I would say, I would just say to message me on Instagram, the Eric Gray, and just say the word content. That's it. Just find me on Instagram, the Eric Gray, TheEricGray, and just message content. We'll start interacting, we'll start chatting, but we'll also send you our free content strategy template that we use to build every brand off of. I've done it for the past 10 years. We got a free content strategy template that we'll send to anybody that sends that over. But yeah, the Eric Gray message content. It'll get into the right folder, and we'll send it over to you. And if there's work that we can do together, great. But we are in the business. Our mission is to help brands connect, tell stories, and build raving fans. And so anything we can do along that way with your audience, Bill, we're happy to do.
Well, I appreciate that, Eric. And your story, it's inspiring. Your insights, invaluable. I'm so glad that we had a chance to reconnect after working earlier together at EA Sports. Thank you for sharing your experience at Universal, how you've built Maverick Content Studios. I think that what's come across to me, at least, and I'm sure to the rest of the audience, is how your passion, your creativity, and your faith have all come together to create something that I think is pretty extraordinary. And to anyone who's listening, if you're ready to elevate your content strategy, do exactly what Eric just talked about in terms of reaching out to him on Instagram. They're ready to help you. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, Professor Leads, for more conversations like this. We're just getting started, and I can't wait to bring you more insights from amazing entrepreneurs like Eric. Eric, thank you again for your time. I really appreciate it. Have a wonderful new year, and we'll look forward to talking again soon.
You got it, man. Talk soon.